All right, welcome back to another episode of the 9 Point Day podcast. I'm your host, Jacob Langworthy. We have a very special guest. He is the man behind New England Stone Lifting. You might have seen some of his content around on Instagram and other places. Jarrett McPhee, welcome to the show.
Hey Jacob, thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah,
I'm
thank you for
really
coming on.
looking
This
forward
is
to talking to you.
yeah, it's great. So, just we start off most podcasts with new guests. Like, let's get a little bit of background on you, who you are, what you do.
So I'm Jarrett McPhee. I run New England Stone Lifting along with my training partner Steve Sharp and a whole cadre of people up and down New England. Talking about Tom Billinge, War Yoga in Connecticut, Seth Woodman up in Vermont, Big Red Doc, Brian Clifford, a bunch of, this isn't just me. This is like, it's a whole bunch of people. It's really cool. But who I am is I'm a stone lifter and a Highland Games athlete and a designer. I do all of the stuff that you see on all of our Instagram reels, and I could go in depth in a whole bunch of ways, but you let me know what you want to talk about, and I'm down to expand.
So stone lifting and Highland Games. Let's get a little bit of your sporting background. How'd you come into Highland Games? How'd you come into stone lifting? Did you have a track and field background? Were you into strongman at all?
Honestly, my growing up background was skateboarding, rollerblading, stuff like that. I didn't do a lot of sports when I was a kid because when I was a super young kid, when I was 6 years old, a jungle gym that my dad had built snapped while I was hanging upside down on it, and I slammed onto my neck, and I crushed 2 vertebrae in my neck, and I would wake up in screaming pain for the first 9 years of my life after that, until I was about 14.
Jesus, that's crazy.
Yes, it was completely bonkers. So I didn't do a lot of contact sports. I always wanted to play football, but I never did. So and I was very intimidated by strength training for a really long time. And then when I hit my 20s, I just was what the fuck am I thinking? You just go out and have fun and just do the thing. Nobody cares. So I went and I started strength training. So at this point, I've been strength training over 20 years, and played rugby. I did all the things that I never did growing up. And eventually, I set a goal for myself. I was I've done all these cool sports. I want to do something really cool before I turn 40, and I was I really want to do Highland Games. And when that was when I was coming up, there was no easy way in. Everybody was you have to have done a Highland Games to do this Highland Games. So, I took a step back and I was what's proto Highland Games? And it was 2017, and Martin Jancis's book, Martin Jancis and Bill Crawford's book had come out, and stone lifting started to appear on the radar, and I was well, that's Proto Highland Games. That counts. Let's just go do that. So I went and did that. And for my 40th birthday, I went right to Scotland and lifted my first historic stone.
So let's backpedal a little bit. You said rugby. How long did you play rugby for?
3 years.
What was that like?
Yeah. It was pretty taxing. I was a prop, so I was right at the front of the scrum, and I just basically hit people all day for 90 minutes a day, and I was constantly out of breath, and I was constantly knocked down and hitting people, and I never scored a try, and I never never got anything cool happen except for my very first game. I got scoop tackled, and basically it resulted in a try. And I was like, yeah, I did something. And everyone was like, oh, you just scored a penalty. Like, do
Yeah,
you know what you did?
were there.
Yeah, good job. But it was great, and I highly recommend rugby to anybody. Like, it's such a dope sport. I would love to play it more, but miles and wear and tear, you gotta balance that stuff.
Yeah, rugby is one of those sports that I like the idea of it, but I don't know if I'll ever want to play it. Just because, like, I guess in the back of my head too, and I was told like this is incorrect, but I believe it to be true. Like they said, there are two sports that you can't really just like pick up and then excel with at a later age, and one was rugby, the other one was hockey, just because the competition level is so high that you're never going to be a stellar athlete in that sport because you won't have the game sense that the other guys do.
I can see why people say that, but I think that rugby, like any other sport, it's all about playing to your level, and it's about playing
Sure.
with the team that you're on, and you can excel within your team. You can be a really good contributor at whatever age you pick it up. Just like just like everything else, it's all a matter of perspective, I think.
Yeah. Then then you said Highland Games. Your first Highland Games was in New England and somewhere up there.
Yep, sure was my
And
first Highland.
well, they said you had to do a Highland Games to be part of the Highland Games.
Yeah, yeah. New England was like when I was like looking to get into Highland Games. There was a Highland Games down in South County of Rhode Island that happened, and it was on such a small field that they were like, you can't do it. And then as I like sort of like looked broader and broader, it was kind of similar. I think that that's changed a lot in the past like 8 years or so. Like that's really about as long as I've been thinking about Highland Games.
Yeah.
I've with things like No Fame Games showing up, like that was where I got my start. That's where the other part of Nestle got his start. Steve, like both of us started there, and without people like Josh McIntosh, who puts on No Fame Games, like we wouldn't have the community that we have at this point, and that like sort of like cross collaboration.
Yeah, it seems in my last couple of years of going out to the Northeast to throw, you guys have weird rules, like not necessarily rules, but like the games are a little bit more exclusive.
Yeah.
At least what I was told, that's how it kind of was before. Last couple of years, it's been changing to be more open. That not everything's an invite kind of game, and the other one was hammers. Hammers are not like a guarantee at every games in the Northeast because of field size. Yeah. And I always thought that's like the craziest thing because in the Midwest, and like there's always an opportunity to throw. Like no one will ever, like if it's your first day, there's never like a field constraint or like a cap of people. Like we're only allowing 10 people in. Like, oh well, if it's your first time, you're in too.
Yeah.
And hammers are always there.
Yeah. 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 Like hammers are always like a catch as catch can situation. Like it's, you'll go to a field and they'll be like, oh yeah, this field's a little small, so we're only throwing the heavy hammer. You're not throwing light. Like you're like, oh okay. I guess that's cool. Like I'd like to do both, but whatever. It's the constraints. We definitely have less space here in New England than you do out in the Midwest.
Right.
So that makes sense. Like,
yeah. You guys got to look at a map and see the roads, and
yeah,
it's way different out here. But what was interesting too, I threw in New York and Albany, or outside of Albany last year, and it was a small field, but they had light hammer and not heavy, which I thought was just
weird.
exactly. And I was like, this is kind of weird. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, okay, fine, but it's odd.
Yeah.
I
Well, more
appreciate it. I
people
don't
can
want,
throw this further. Like, yeah.
yeah, I don't want to throw the heavy hammer and not the light, or rather just, if we're only doing one, let's do light.
Yeah. No, it's light hammer for everybody except for the pros. Like when you guys step on the field, then you're throwing heavy. That's all there is to it. Like,
Oh yeah. Well, and the crazy thing was like we had at this games we had we had two hammer cages. I think it was might have been lightweight men and pros throwing at the same time, and they measured it out. They're like, oh, it was pretty close. I'm like, how far did you measure? And they're like, oh, it's like 120 before like if you get close to anyone. And I'm like, I'll tell them to move.
yeah.
So and like luckily like they were kind of looking my way, and I was like, okay, thank you. And they're like, got it. We'll move down the.
Yeah.
But I would have clocked
Big hitter. Big hitter. Outfield shift. Yeah.
Which I don't know. That's never happened where like people are looking for me coming and then they move out of the way. It's like I'm doing something.
That's going to be really satisfying, right? Like,
Yeah.
like you're going out there and like people have to get out of your way because you're like, yeah, I can hit a 125, 130, 190, 220 feet. It's fine.
Right. I'm just glad that like they moved out of my way and I actually used the space they gave me, because if I didn't,
Yeah.
I was like, and that day I was super sick. Like it was like 65 degrees in the morning when I came out to the field, and I'm pouring sweat. I'm like, oh my God, I'm not doing well. I'm not feeling okay. But it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And I'm sure that that's like that's a different thing for you too, as somebody who gets invited to things. Like you kind of have to perform even when you're not feeling well, right? Like,
Yeah, I took a gamble, and because I was sick like from the Thursday before, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna drive out there, and if I get a day into the drive and I'm like, oh, I'm not gonna be able to make it, like I'll turn around and come home, and I'll feel bad that they invited me out there and I didn't make it. But then I get about halfway and I was like, well, you're kind of feeling a little bit better. Like, get a nice hotel room, sleep in nice, comfortable sheets, and like maybe you'll feel better the next day. And I didn't. But I'm like, well, I'm here. So like, I mean, what's the worst I could have? Like, I die on the field. Like, well, I'm already trying to go out that way anyways. So
yeah,
what's the
whatever.
difference? Yeah.
Yeah.
They will not appreciate it, but that's my Viking funeral right there.
Or maybe they will. Like you throw a
Yeah.
world record. You throw a world record and just fucking drop dead. That's
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
I mean, that's a lot. Like dropping dead after a world record seems a lot better than like making the world record and then always wondering like, when's the next guy going to beat that? How long is this going to stand? Because I've set world records before, and one of them got beat 3 weeks later, and I was like, oh, okay, well that sucked.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't that good then.
Dude, even worse than that would be like having the people move out of the way, failing miserably, then dropping dead.
Dude, yeah, that's a new fear unlocked.
Hey, I'm here to help.
Yeah, that's not the legacy I want. But so let's get into a little bit more stone lifting. So
Yeah, dude.
you read Bill Crawford's book and
Yep.
gave you some insight into the world of stone lifting. How do you feel about the like, I don't want to say resurgence, but like the increased like popularity of natural stone lifting these days? Because it's on the rise.
Dude, honestly I love it. Like I think it's great. I think it's fantastic from like a whole host of angles. Like stone lifting's on the rise, which means that countries around the world are rediscovering things that make them unique and are rediscovering things that make them special and like giving people reasons to go places. And for us here in America, we're experiencing something that's totally unique from the rest of the world, where we have a chance to like build culture around stone lifting, because we don't really seem to have the same traditions that the rest of the world has writ large. Like there's like small pockets where there's like the stones up in Canada that exist. There's a couple other ones around America, but like there's no like long history of stone lifting that has permeated the culture the way it has in Scotland and Ireland and Japan and the Polynesian Islands and Greece and Basque Country and like all of these other places. They all have these like really crazy stone lifting traditions, and we don't. So I love that we have the opportunity to influence how American stone lifting is seen, while also giving reverence to everything else that's happening around the world.
Yeah, I like stone lifting a lot, and I just wish I wish America was older, just because like we might have developed our own like original like stone culture if it was 300 years older than it is.
So I do believe that there is a stone culture in America.
Okay.
The stone culture in America that we have found to this point, that predates the formation of the United States of America, there is a native tradition, but it's in building and not lifting as a strength sport. Like it's, if you look all around America, all around the continent, you see earthworks, and there's earthworks, and there's stone structures, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff like that that predates America. In New England, we're told that that does not exist, but there's a whole archaeological culture that's happening right now that is talking about the probability of a lot of the things that were traditionally attributed to colonists as stone walls from the time that they came over, as actually being things like prayer seats that you can watch the sunrise out of, turtle effigies, snake effigies, and things of that nature. So there is a stone culture, it's just not as directly tied to specific stones. The other thing is, when people came over from Scotland and Ireland and other places, they did bring the idea of stones as a test of strength, but the records that we're finding are more specifically attributed to the person and not the stone. They're more like, Johnny Bill lifted this 400-pound stone, and then he died doing it.
We found some of that stuff.
Yeah. So, like, that stuff exists. Like, there is a stone culture. It's just not the same stone culture as what happened in the old world. Right. The other thing that we're finding is there are a couple stones that are attributed to the slave trade, and there is no way that I want to celebrate that. That is not in any way, shape, or form what I want to have American stones be.
So, like, you bring up an interesting point, I guess, because, like, if you look at, like, in the Ohio River Valley, the mounds that they have there, the mound builders, there's stones under there, and it kind of makes me think of when you look at, like, the history of Highland Games, right? They're like, they're throwing stones for, like, tests of manhood, like they're out in the field throwing hammers and stuff like that, and they attribute it the start of the Highland Games to be the year 900, the year 1300, things like that, and it didn't really get organized until the early 1800s, like 1812, 1813 is when like the first like actual Highland Games was. I mean that's up for right? Dude, I can't remember the names. I got a guy coming on next week, and he's got a lot to say on that. So
cool.
I'll learn more then. But
I look forward to that episode.
Right. it's going to be a good one, and there's going to be a little bit of a bummer with it, but we'll get to that's a little tease for the next episode.
Heard.
But if you're thinking of like they're doing these building works, right? They're building mounds or building walls and things like that. They're going to be sitting around and they're going to be lifting stones. Like that's one stone that like they're like, oh, we got to break that one open because it's too big to move. And some guy's like, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And you get Big Johnny over there and he lifts it. And there's an element of culture to that, right?
Yep, 100%. Yeah, and unfortunately, because of the way this country was founded, like so much of the native population was decimated, and their entire history was oral. Like it was an oral tradition where like stories were passed down voice to voice. So a lot of that history and a lot of those records were probably lost. I've reached out to a bunch of the tribal councils around New England. I'm trying to make inroads with them, but obviously, as a middle-aged white dude, like it's kind of a tough sell. Like,
Sure.
So I'm just trying to, like everything we do here, I'm trying to be as respectful as we can, and still build something that I can feel good about.
Sure.
Yeah.
Speaking of oral traditions, have you heard about like the Aboriginal people in Australia and how they can keep like, I think it's like a 2,000 or 3,000 year oral history in like, I mean it's widely gone away now, but at one point like they have a history book of knowledge in their head from the last 2,000 years.
Oh, I fully believe that happens and has happened for millennia. Like writing in books aren't that old. Like
Nope.
Most of this shit was passed down person to person.
Yeah.
So that makes total sense to me.
Yeah, and there's people theorizing that that there's a DNA element to it that they're especially keen to remembering their oral histories because they've been doing it for so long and they've been doing it the exact same way since for like 100,000 or 1,000 years or whatever, and so like it kind of got embedded into them that this is how we understand and learn things because it's like
cool.
It's their curriculum, you know.
Yeah,
it's fun to think about.
No, that's awesome. Like I wish that we could all do that. I wish that we could all remember history.
Yeah.
Period. And short term and long term.
Well, I like memory's weird, right? Like I wish I could go back in time and because if you look at like histories that were written 60 years after the event happened, like even if you go back to like Plato and stuff like that, like he's writing histories that he was not there for. Like it was kind of told to him from other people and he was told again. He became the decider of like how this is going to get worded out for future generations. Yeah. But like people's memories are flawed. We make up memories. Like we like will introduce new thoughts and be like, that's what happened to me.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
And with storytelling, it changes. It like the histories change as you tell the story.
Yeah,
like, that's kind of built into storytelling, and that's part of that like distillation process that like gets us to the core of a story or core of history that allows us to keep the big beats and not worry about the small stuff. But when we're talking about like a history of a republic or a history of a thing that needs specific writing down, we're stuck with the history that is written by the winners, because in so many conflicts and in so many places we end up finding that that's the story that gets told.
Sure.
The other histories exist, but they are on the fringe and they are not necessarily ever brought to the forefront.
Yeah, and some of that too is like it's what you deem to be like a valid source, right? The winners wrote the history books on that,
Yeah.
But it's like I guess I'm trying to figure out how to word it, but like history is weird to the point where we we pick and choose what we want to believe is true, and it kind of comes down to like your moral framework of like what you're will allow to like what you accept.
So
So stone lifting.
we're way fucking far away from stones
Yeah.
right now. But yeah, I would say that like let's talk about some stones because that's what we're here for, and we're not here
Right.
to necessarily have the deepest political discussion.
No. Well, and I abhor politics because life is a lot more than worrying about what the our overlords are doing to us. There's more to it than that.
This is the only thing I'll say about that.
Yeah.
And I think this will get us back on track. Regardless of what's happening in the world today, or with government, with any of the bullshit that's happening, my goal remains the same. And my goal is to create community. It's to create places that are safe for everybody, places that people can feel welcomed, and places that people can flourish. So if New England stone lifting can be part of that positivity, that allows people to have a space that allows people to have a space that they feel safe in. They can use that energy that they don't have to spend lifting stones to do other good things. So whenever we're building community, we're doing the right thing. We're making people better. We're making people stronger. We're forging connections in ways that are outside of the system that we live in. And that's the thing that I'm most interested in everything I do.
Yeah. So have you gotten have you lifted any other stones in the United States like the ones in Utah? Because they've kind of have a similar thing going on.
Yeah, I haven't made it out to Utah. I've basically been on both coasts. I've done everything. Like I've done all of our stones in New England, and I've done John Auden stones out in Oregon. Like I did a bunch of those. I have plans to go out to Utah. I have plans to go out and visit the peaky boulders that John is putting together. Urquhart stones. I want to go up to the Goldthorpe stones in Canada, and I want to go visit the guys up in Edmonton. So like there's a lot of stuff we want to do. I just haven't managed to do it.
There's time. Yeah, you never know.
Who knows?
I went to Utah a couple times, and we had a vacation. I've talked about this on the podcast before. I'll talk about it again because it was cool. We had a family vacation, and I convinced everyone it'd be a good idea to go to Utah, to go to Moab, and we can go like, I don't know, mountain biking, rafting, or whatever, and live in the desert for a week. And but I wanted to go there just because of the Moab stone, and I was like, that's it's a cool little stone. It didn't seem too heavy, and I'm pretty green when it comes to like natural stones. So I was like, well, that seems like a good opportunity for me to go. So I tried it, failed. I mean, I got to my chest, but it's not what I wanted to do. Go ahead.
Let me stop you right there. That's not a failure, homie. Like, that's a win. Like, there are multiple lifts with every single natural stone, and that's one of the things that's super cool about it. Like, getting it off the ground and getting wind under the stone is a success. Getting it to your lap is a success. Getting to chest is a success. Shoulder and then press are also successes. Like, if you can succeed in any one of those things, you're doing a natural stone, and you just have a goal for next time. It's not like it's a good or a bad thing. Like, you succeeded. Don't downplay that.
Yeah. I guess why I say it was I failed was because I looked at the weight of the stone. I looked at a bunch of videos of people lifting it, and this is how green I was in natural lifting, natural stone lifting. I I convinced myself I'm going to get to my shoulder, and once I do that, I'm going to press it. It's like it's
Yeah.
220 pounds. Like I'm going to press this stone, and turns out you got to breathe when like you're holding a stone to your chest trying to hike it up.
Yep.
I wasn't doing that. I tried it like 3 or 4 times. I was just just dying, getting all red.
Yeah, man.
And then when it was all over, I was like, oh man, I don't really feel that great. And like my whole family was there, and like we had it was a nice little trail to like walk down in like a parking area. And I was like, you need to go get the Forerunner and like come bring it back here and like come pick me up. And so I just sit down, and my stepmom's with me, and she's like, yeah, go get the car. And I was like, okay, great. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, everything gets like super bright and like white, and I'm like, oh god. And she's like, you okay? I'm like, yeah, I'll be fine. I just puke up whatever water I drank all morning. And I was like, that's not good. So they finally picked me up in the vehicle. We drove back, and I was just laying there with the air conditioning on, eating like Little Debbie donuts until I felt good again, which was like 20 minutes later.
Gotta get
But
that sugar up.
yeah, it was. Well, the problem also, it didn't help that I didn't eat anything because I was kind of excited, kind of nervous. Like I'm gonna go fucking lift this thing.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then I tried it again a year or two later. Me and my brother, we went to Idaho for lightweight nationals for the Highland Games, and on the way back, I was like, well, let's just take 20 minutes out of our way and go hit Moab again. Go camp out there, and like my brother brought a giant telescope, and we'll look at the stars, and then I'll lift the stone in the morning. Or we ended up doing it that evening, so I get there after throwing all day at Worlds, and needless to say, I didn't get it to my chest that day. I was beat.
Yeah.
I did a water cut 2 days before, threw all day, stayed up super late the night after the games, and then drove all the way there. So it wasn't going up.
Yeah. No, dude.
I'll get it one day.
You you got it. You're going to get it more.
More. Okay.
Like you've succeeded. You like that's the thing. Like there's so many factors with every stone lift all the time. Is it soaking wet? Is the day horrible? Do you feel bad? Do you like feel great? Like do you put enough chalk on your hands? Are you strong enough? Like have you overtrained? Like there's so many factors that go into a stone. Plus being able to read the stone. Like being able to go out there and be like, man, this stone's lighter than the other one that I did, but it is way harder. There's so many stones out there like that.
Oh yeah.
Like there's like 300-pound stones that are harder than 400-pound stones. Like Dritvik has the full Sturker stone at like 330-ish, and like that thing is harder than something that's heavier, that has better handles because it's so smooth. Like
Right.
no stone is the same, so like why would you expect to be able to do every stone all the time? Like
Yeah, and like being able to read the stone, it's just like with like caber. I tell people all the time, like one of the biggest challenges of caber is like being able to read the stick, like how you got to move with it, when to pull with it, and like I'm just like with stone lifting, you learn how to do that better by the more you do it. You want to get better at stone lifting, you lift more stones. You want to get better at caber, you throw more sticks.
100%. It's time under tension and reps. Like I cleaned. You can't tell, but I cleaned up my office today, and I found a couple old like weightlifting journals, like where you write shit down, and
Yeah.
I found out that I have been doing stones actively in training since 2017, and I've been doing some of my favorite stone lifting accessories since early 2018. It's
Nice.
like, and they like I've been doing them consistently, and you can see the increases, but like that's how long it takes.
Yeah.
it's
Yep.
it's crazy.
Yeah.
And every time you do a rep or spend time under tension or anything like that, you get better. You will get better.
Let's talk a little bit about training for stone lifting.
Yeah.
What do you do different than like a normal like Highland Games athlete for stones?
So I don't focus a lot on like the throwing stuff. Like that's really the big difference. There's not a lot of rotational stuff. There's not a lot of like push through because stone lifting tends to be like static. So a lot of the training that I do focuses around time under tension, like a 1 rep max, or a 1 rep max for as long as you can hold it is going to be more akin to stone lifting than an AMRAP, like as many reps as possible. Like, because when you're trying a stone and when you're trying a heavy stone, you're going to see that a heavy stone is literally like a 1 rep max that takes you a minute. It takes you 2 minutes. It takes you a long time. Like, you're fighting with it to your lap. You're fighting with it to your chest. You're breathing through the stone, and then you're bringing it to your shoulder. All of these things take time, and they take tension. They take the ability to stay strong and tight throughout your entire body. So what I do, and what I recommend a lot of people do, is a sort of modified version of 531. Yeah, that program.
Yeah, Jim Wendler's classic
Jim Wendler's
531.
program. Yeah. 531's great. I use 531 for all of my training, for all of my big lift training. And my big lifts, I typically train squat, bench, and overhead press. I don't really do deadlift because I substitute out stones for deadlift.
Yeah, it'll get you there.
Yeah, it does the same thing, but like I'm basically trading out GPP for specialization. So like a squat day, what I'll do is I'll do the 531 program, and then for my accessories, I will run. I'll do squat, then go into a front squat for 5x10 at 50%, then into Zercher deadlift or Zercher stone squat, which is basically from the ground with the Zercher bar, about the same weight as the front squat, and then into a thing that I like to do all the time called squat mornings, and I do 5x10 of those as well. Squat mornings are a combination good morning and squat. They're also called Kong squats or Kang squats.
Okay, I've done those for warm ups.
Yeah.
They're awesome.
Yeah,
I do those all the time.
I like to do them super, like not super heavy. Like I like to do them reasonably heavy. It's like 50 to 60% of your training max.
Okay.
But you kind of have to like, it's self-regulated. All of this stuff has to be self-regulated. Like you can't.
Yeah.
Like I would never give somebody a program and say, follow this to the letter, because with stone lifting specifically, you can burn out your CNS, like the way you train for it.
Yeah, and I can see with like stone lifting, like you're putting yourself in like such a compromised position to like just pick this thing up off the ground, and overdoing it like is going to get you hurt for sure.
Yeah. Like stones are really self-limiting, which I like, because if you're not strong enough in your hands, you're not going to get it off the ground. If you're not strong enough in your wrists, you're not going to get it to your lap. Excuse me. If you're not strong enough in your like hips, you're not going to get it to your chest, and so on and so forth. So when you find that sticking point, you know what your weak point is and what you have to work through. I actually just put up a 12-week stone lifting program based on 531 on my on New England Stone Lifting's Instagram that links out to my site. And I've also got a 5-week stone peak that I used for when I went to Ireland last year.
Oh, nice. Yeah, 531 is it is the gold standard for strength programming, I think. I mean for everyone, like it'll work for everyone.
Forever.
Yeah, forever. But here's the thing. I've been doing it. This would be about a year into like my strength training. So I didn't start really lifting until I was 22, 23 maybe.
Yeah, I was 24.
Yeah, and so I started with like some other programs that are essentially just a long version of 531. Like they'll add some extra steps in there. And then I found 531. I was like, oh, this is great. Bought 3 of the books and went through them, started adding stuff, taking stuff away, making it a little bit better, and kind of changing it. Last 4 years, I've done my own modified 531. Where I'm essentially just like adding in cleans and snatches and stuff like that. And but I rarely ever take away percentages. I generally just run the same percentages. But except this year, I'm actually doing something different because I'm confident enough in my strength ability to, because like my main thing is throwing. Like if I'm throwing far, that's what I want to do. I can care less if the squat 600, 700 pounds. I mean, that'd be neat. That'd be really, really cool. But I'd rather throw the lightweight 82 feet. But so my program has changed to where it is a whole lot less in the gym. And what I'm doing in the gym, I'll be at like 80% for a long time. And then maybe I'll go to like close to 90% on some of the lifts. Not even all the lift, like just like maybe squat, and push press and maybe deadlift, maybe. But like the main thing is just throw and don't be tired when you throw. If you want to get tired, you do it from throwing.
Well, that's the self-regulation that we're talking about, right? Like what I do is I keep my training max low. I've got some arthritis because it's hereditary and like getting beat up over years. So like I keep my training max low, and when I'm feeling better, I use the last set as like an AMRAP, and I go for as many as fucking possible. And usually I'll hit like 20 reps, 22 reps, like whatever on whatever the mains are.
Yeah,
and
that's crazy.
It's in that just adds to that time under tension for me. Like, because if I can do those AMRAPs, I know that I can fight through a stone when I'm feeling good in the same sort of way, because the time ends up being comparable.
Yeah, that's very interesting because I've talked about it with other people a bunch that as a thrower, like I'll do those AMRAP sets at the end of like my main lift, and it's nowhere close to 20. It's nowhere close to 10. And like I remember reading like in one of the 531 books, he's like, oh yeah, on this last set, your top set, like it's programmed for 5. You should be getting 15 to 20 or whatever. And I was like, you're out of your mind. But I think it's a mental thing. Like as a thrower, like I'm not grinding anything. If I slow down after a certain point, I'm done. I'll rack it because like it's not going to like. But there are people are going to hear that and be like, oh well, fucking anytime you struggle, just dump it. I'm like, no, there's a time and place in training for like, especially as a thrower, to like grind it out and push yourself.
No, you need to be fast and explosive. So like your AMRAP and your strength work should sort of lend itself towards that. Whereas as a stone lifter, I need to be slow, methodical, and able to push through places that are sticking points. Like we have different goals, and we should approach training in different ways. Like
I can see like if you got a stone like on your lap and you got to sit there for a minute because one, you got to catch your breath, and two, like you got to turn that thing because like you've read it and you're like, I'm not going to be able to stand up with it unless I spin it, right? Like stuff like that. Yeah.
There's a stone that I have at my house. It's called the Nemesis stone. It's also called leg biter because it kind of fell on my leg and it should have broken my leg. I'm really surprised that it didn't. But I fought with this stone. It's 385 pounds. I fought with this stone for a full year before I stood to chest with it. And I've only stood to chest with it once. Like, it is one of the, like, it causes me more consternation than stones that are like 30 pounds heavier, 40 pounds heavier, 50 pounds heavier. Like, it is literally my nemesis. And so like, but like, but like, yeah, like there's times when you just can't get a thing into the right position. You have to adjust it, and like you know it's gonna beat you up, but you still grind through it because that's what the goal is. So
That was gonna be one of my next questions is do you have house stones? Because I imagine you do.
yeah, yeah, I
You got a
got
lot?
few. I got some.
Okay.
I have at my house. I have the Nemesis stone. I have one of John Lundstrom's Atlas stones. We call it the Brain.
Okay.
It's this weird. It's too dense for its size as an Atlas stone, and it's got this really cool like texture on it, and it's so cool and so weird that I was like, this has to be some sort of cut stone, and I sent it to Dale from the Stones of Strength podcast because he's a geologist, and I was like, dude, what is this? And he's like, there's nothing here that says this is anything but concrete to me. And I was like, all right, I guess it's just concrete that's like super dense from the 70s, 80s.
So did he make he made that Atlas stone?
The story that I was told is that it was made for him on a job site that he worked on.
Okay.
It's one of the stones that came from his house when they rediscovered the Lundstrom lifting stone that Eric Dawson of a Titan has, which is a 422 pound stone that you lift with one hand.
I've lifted it. It's awesome.
You tried that. You tried that at No Fame a couple years ago.
Yeah. I meant to do it last year, and but by the time we finished throwing sheaf, you guys were loading it up, and I was like, I've done it.
Dude. Yeah. I'll tell you what, like I I did better with that stone the first year than I did last year. Like
really?
last year it like ripped my hand open and
see,
and
yeah, and
barely broke it off the ground.
Yeah, after throwing all day, like I wanted to go for time, but I'm like, don't just break it off the ground and get a cool picture.
Yeah, dude. Like honestly, like some of the stuff is just that. Like it looks cool, so
Yeah.
like, just get it off the ground.
Well, so
Like,
I have this.
You can't be too precious.
Right. I have this this thing. If there's a 10th event or a stone, or if there's something to do after the games, like I'm going to try it.
Oh,
whether
yeah.
I feel good or not, we're gonna carry this shield. We're gonna do this farmer's carry. We're gonna do something because it's there. Why not? Strength is cool.
Yeah. My understanding is that the Lundstrom stone is coming back this year to No Fame.
Perfect. I'm going for time this year then.
Are you coming up?
Oh yes.
Oh,
I'll be there every year they have me.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, then I won't ask next time.
Yeah.
David Keogh is coming over from Ireland for that.
Yes.
We're gonna do a bunch of stones with him, and I just got confirmation from Sean Urquhart that he's coming out for it too.
Nice.
So we're actually gonna have like a really good gathering of stone lifters. It's gonna be really, really, really cool.
Yeah, I just got a message earlier about all the people that are coming, and I was like, I don't have. I might have to go in a day early to because I'm gonna podcast with people. I need a chat.
Oh yeah, dude.
And they're all showing up.
Do it right from the field. Like between throws, just be like, so what do you think about today?
Yeah, I got to fit them in somehow.
Yeah,
but
just bank a whole bunch of podcasts. Release them slowly over the year.
That's the plan. That way I don't have to do remote ones. Like as much as I like doing remote ones, they are fine. But in-person conversations they're much nicer.
They flow better. They definitely do.
Yeah. And even like if like we talk over each other like in person, like it makes more sense than talking over like remotely. But
yeah, 100%, 100%.
So like let's talk about the Lundstrom stones because those are the only New England stones that I've lifted, or the one. They have an interesting story. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
So you've done the Lundstrom lift, correct?
Yes.
You haven't done the Lundstrom stones.
No.
Okay.
No.
So
just the big one.
Okay. So there's technically 4, but there's 3 Lundstrom stones. There's John's Atlas stone, which I have, which is a light training stone, which is 155 pounds in a small Atlas stone. There is the Lundstrom lift, which is the one-handed lift at 422 pounds. That is at Eric Dawson's Titan barbell in, I want to say Bellingham, but that's probably the wrong town. It's up in Mass. And then there are also the Lundstrom walking stones. The Lundstrom walking stones were for a while called the Loon stones, and were the stones that were used at Loon.
Okay.
That everybody's lifted.
Yeah, interesting. I didn't realize those were the same ones.
Yeah. So basically, what happened with them was, so Bill Crawford, Dr. Bill, is the keeper of those stones. They're kind of like John gave them to him and a couple other people. And when the Crawfords left Loon, the stones went with him. So last year we brought them down to the fort at 4 in New Hampshire, and they were basically rechristened the Lundstrom stones, because that's what they are. They're John stones. He created them in the 80s. He created them at the time the heaviest farmers carry stones in America. They're not super heavy, but they're heavy. You know, they're like 510 pounds or something like that combined. Mm-hmm. I want to say it's like I don't have the math in my head, but it's like 237 and 276 something like that. Yeah. So they're off balance the same way that the Dinnie stones in Scotland are. But yeah, so now they're going to show up at the fort this year. I believe they may be coming to No Fame. I'm not sure about that. They might show up other places. And John Lundstrom is one of the titans of New England Highland Games, as well as New England stonelifting. He's one of the first people to really bring stonelifting to New England and to America. He and a few other people, including Dr. Bill and some other people who kind of want to stay out of the spotlight, if that makes sense.
Sure.
All sort of did that together in the 80s. And they were in some of the first books. There was a book called Of Stones and Strength by Steve Jenk.
Okay, yeah.
And there's a whole portion about New England stonelifters in there, and it talks about John and his stones. It talks about them training in Massachusetts and all sorts of cool stuff like that. And we're working with the people who are in that book to actually bring those stones back. And we're hoping that happens this year.
That's awesome. Yeah. When I first heard the story of John and all his stones and being kind of like a figure in New England Highland Games, stuff like that, I was like, this is good. This is a good story. Because if you look at a lot of these historic stones in Scotland and Ireland and things like that, they have a really interesting history and a lore and story that goes along with it. And I'm like, well, this is the start of a good American stone story. Yeah. That in 200 years the story's going to change because of fake memories and whatnot, and it's going to be this mythical thing, and it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, man. That every historical stone started as a non-historic stone. They all started somewhere, with some people just being like, hey, that thing looks cool, let's go pick that up. And then other people would show up and start picking it up too. And then more people start picking it up, and people come from further away and want to be part of it. And then people start traveling to it, and it becomes a thing. Mm-hmm. And it's all through that. It's all through storytelling. It's all through community. It's all through all the stuff that makes stone lifting so great. Like we have in almost a month from the day that we're recording this, which is the 20th of February, we have John Travel of Stones Repeat coming out to New England, and we're doing the first ever full New England stone lifting tour.
Oh, cool.
We're spending 4 days or 5 days doing every stone in New England. We're starting in Connecticut on Saturday, lifting all of Tom Billinge's stones, War Yoga, all of the stones that he set up in Connecticut. Then we're leaving from Connecticut, driving to Rhode Island, doing all of our stones in Rhode Island, going up to Mass, doing the Huckleberry Stone and the other stones in Milford, going on to the Old Stone Church, doing a bunch of stones there, going all the way up to New Hampshire, to Fort 4, all the way up north to where the Lundstrom Stone and the John Paul Sigmarsson Stone are held on another day, and then out to Maine and doing a bunch of stones out there, and then down to Titan Barbell to finish off the trip with the 422 pound Lundstrom Stone. It's going to be crazy.
Yeah, that's awesome. You know, I have the map up of the New England Stones of Strength, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, I wish, for all the listeners out there, go look that up, because if you're in the area, try to hit one of these stones on your way through. Because I traveled all over this area in the last 2 years, and I didn't lift a single one of them.
Well, you were busy, dude. Like you were.
Yeah, I know. Yeah,
you were doing some stuff.
Well, and we went up to Maine, and I was driving back. One, the weather wasn't good driving back from Maine, but I could have picked off a few of these, because we went through, Boston, Rhode Island, and then down through Connecticut. So.
Well, I mean, this year when you come out, like, let's get together and we'll go do, like, the Rhode Island stones are really easy to get to.
Yeah.
The Connecticut stones are not that far away. They're like 2 hours from me, so they're about 3 hours from Milford. You know, like if you're at No Fame Games, we can blast down to Connecticut. I mean, we're going to be doing a bunch of stone lifting before the games and after, because David's going to be here.
Heck
so
yeah, I'm into that. Yeah.
You're like, stones are for everyone, and we want everyone to be part of this. So come and lift stones with us.
So you've traveled abroad to lift stones. You've been to Ireland, Scotland as well.
Yep, and Iceland.
Oh, and Iceland. What? So did you do like a whole Iceland tour, like Dirtbik?
Yeah, I've actually been to Iceland twice. Iceland was really cool. During COVID, my wife Emily and I went to Iceland, and we were like, if we use stones as sort of like the markers, we'll stay away from everybody. So we like booked all our Airbnbs and did all that stuff. And I went to Husafell, Dritvik, a set of stones that were recently discovered by Urquhart and a couple other folks, called they were calling them the England stones. I'm not sure if that's right. Those were really cool. You had to walk over a river, like climb over a river on a geothermal pipe to get to them. It was super cool. You were like 20 feet in the air. You're like looking down and you're like, oh, stones. Sick. And then we went up to the West Fjords and went to Hadler, and I lifted Legstein as well. So we had plans to do the rest of the West Fjords, but we got stuck in what was actually the worst storm that Iceland had seen in about 30 years, and we drove through it. So
because stones, yeah.
The stones, yeah. But Husafell was awesome. We like showed up, and there's only one other stone that made me as like keyed up and worried, and that was the first historic stone that I did, which was the Inver stone. But,
Okay, yeah.
But we went to Husafell, and we like drove up to the place, and I had spent the day prior like watching videos on how people were lifting it and like doing all this stuff, and I had trained for it. And we got there, and I was like, yep, I know what to do. And I like went over and I started fighting with it, and I kept fighting with it for hours. Like, I could not lift the fucking thing off the ground. Like, I kept breaking it off the ground. I could kind of get it to lap. I couldn't do a damn thing with it. And I felt really beat up about it, just like you did with the stone that you were talking about. So we went to our cabin that we were staying in, and my brain just wouldn't shut up, and it wouldn't let me stop thinking about it. So I watched the videos again, and I started being like, oh, I was lifting it on the wrong point. So like this point, there's like a point where you get like your arm underneath like a thing, and that one little thing allows you to lift it easier. Like, and if it's turned the wrong way, it's just smooth as glass.
Yeah.
So I went back the next day, and I like literally went "Wort," and turned it and picked the damn thing up, and I was like, oh my god.
Heck yeah.
And I like picked it up to lap, and by that point I had burned out both of my biceps, and all the other stones from then on hurt, and I was just like, I'm not even gonna try anything.
Yeah.
So that was in September. While we're out in Iceland, I saw that that Magnus was doing the first Magnus Classic in November, and I was like, man, I wish I had been out here for that. And I was like, well, call Steve and see if he wants to go out to go see it. Like, just do it. Who cares? Everything's super cheap. Yeah. So we went back in November. Followed them around to every single event, to the point where like everyone was just like, hey guys, how's it going? Like, we would like play with all the implements after all the events and stuff. And at one point we were doing natural stones after they did them, and Steve put 120 kilo one to his shoulder, and one of the dudes was like, hey, stop doing that, you're making us all look bad. You know, like, they're just like classic like ball busting in sports.
Yeah.
So we got to Husafell, and they were like, are you guys going to try it? And we were like, after everybody does it. And they're like, oh no, you got to do it first so everybody knows that it can be done. And all of them did the Husafell. Some of them failed, some of them succeeded. It was horrible weather. And then as soon as they were done, I was like, are you guys done? Can I try it? And Magnus is standing there, and he's like, yeah, go ahead. And he turns to the group that he's talking with, and he's like, everybody when they come to Iceland, they always want to touch the Husafell stone and see if they can move it. And I just fucking wrapped it up and stood straight up with it and took 2 steps with it and dropped it. And everybody he was with just started fucking laughing. They were just like, ah!
Heck yeah.
And he just looked at me and went, good lift. And I was like, yeah. So I'm not full Sturker. I don't care. I got to lift it in front of Magnus, and
that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
My parents, they took a trip to Iceland, and I was like, oh, you're going to lift any stones while you're there? And my dad's like, well, they got stones. I'm like, oh, the best stones. Like, and so I pointed out a couple on the map, and I was like, you got to go here, here, and here. And he's like, oh, okay, if I have time. Dude, he went to like 6 different stones. He lifted some of the Dirt Vic stones, went to Husafell. Like, I just woke up one morning to a video from him, like, just picking it up like on end, like just like he just God. He just stood it up, and I was like, oh my gosh. And like he's like, you hear him in the video, like, it's slick. I can't. I'm like, yeah, that's why you can't pick it up. It's slick. Not that it's 400 pounds.
Yeah, it's frightening. Like, these things can definitely hurt you. Like,
yeah.
Like I was in Ireland last year, and I did a whole bunch of the Irish stones. David and Andy both helped me out immensely getting to every single one of the stones. And the last stone was the Flag of Den, which is the absolute heaviest thing I've ever moved ever in my entire life. It is 557 pounds. It is
Jeez.
It is a slab. It is just a giant slab. It was a pagan cursing stone that was then consecrated by a church, which was then used as a lifting stone. It is possibly one of the oldest lifting stones in the world. Like, it's just been in use for years and years and years and years, and it's just sitting in this churchyard. And I managed to like break it off the ground and get it to like swing a little bit. And I was like, man, I don't know if that counts. And I sent the video to them, and both of them were like, that counts. Like, it's 557 pounds. You moved it off the ground. It's fine.
Yeah, dude.
But like, there was a point where I was standing that up from the ground, and the ground's like super, super soaked with water, and my feet slipped, and I felt the stone coming towards me, like, and I was so, like, I managed to like catch it and not drop it directly on me. But I was like, if this thing falls on me, the only person with me is Emily, and she's not going to be able to move this. So I don't know. Maybe I'll have her bring me a beer. Like,
Yeah.
I'll just wait here to die.
That's incredible. So, what stones have you lifted in Scotland?
So we went over in 2019, which is when I turned 40.
Mm-hmm.
The one that I cared the most about was the Inver stone.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the first one we did. It was when it was still at June Richards' house.
Okay.
She had just turned like 92 or 93 years old.
Yeah.
And I have never been more anxious of pretty much anything in my life. Like we drove from Glasgow to Crathie, which is where the place was, and as we came around the corner, we saw her house, and we like parked across the street in the hotel, and I like walked up to the door and I like knocked on the door, being like, can I lift your stone? And it's the first historic stone I've ever done.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Her son was like, yeah, go right ahead. I lifted the stone a bunch, and I got it to chest. I missed shoulder. Like, now a 265-pound stone, like, I could do anytime. But at that time, it was like a super big reach.
Yeah.
And June came out and was like, "Did you already finish? Come and have chocolates. Come and have some tea." And she like invited us in. I got to sign my name in the book that has like Bill Kazmaier, Martin Jancis is in there, John Auden's in there. Like, they're all the like a bunch of these names that like I know now,
Right.
Which is so cool. And they told us how best to get to Inverness, and like what the best routes were, and like what to do and stuff. So we did that stone, and then I did the Newtonmore coffin stone and the Balvenie stone.
Is that the one in the castle?
No, that's Castle Menzies.
Menzies. Yeah.
Yeah. Balvenie is literally down the street from the distillery, and if you lift the stone and if you press it, you get a free burger inside.
Heck yeah.
I got it to shoulder, and they were generous enough to give me a burger, and it was one of the best burgers I've ever had.
Nice.
But because it was 2019, I just had the book. I didn't have GPS that was like really well working, and there were maps, but you couldn't get to them because they were online and GPS didn't work. So like we're driving around trying to find all the stones that are listed in the book, and like the Barravin stone. It says, "Go to the old Barravin church." We looked it up, went to the old Barravin church, and when we got there, we found a whole bunch of McPhees in graves around there, but no Barravin stone. And then when we got back to the hotel where we had Wi-Fi, I was like, we were at the old Barravin church, not the old Barravin church. so we had all of these experiences where we were like, we got to where the stones were, but we couldn't get to them. So I feel like I have unfinished business, and I'm definitely going back to Scotland again. I love going there, and we've gone there a bunch of times. But I definitely want to go back, and I want to spend some time like going to a bunch of the places that I couldn't get to in the past.
Yeah.
I definitely feel like we have. I definitely feel like things have progressed so dramatically in the past 6 years that it's so much more accessible for people.
Oh, yeah.
I love it. I love it so much.
Did you ever get to lift the Denny stones?
Haven't. Yeah.
Oh,
That's on the list. It's a question of timing. They're so popular now that like actually being able to get there and just like you can't walk up and just do it. You have to schedule a time and build
really?
a trip around it. Yeah. They
Yeah.
basically like open a list and you can sign up for any of the days that are available.
Yeah, that's one of those things that like we've talked about before, is that to us, like the Denny stones are extremely popular, and like you would think there'd be a lot more people who have lifted it. And when you actually go look at the log, like it's not a crazy amount of people. It's a reasonable amount. Like it's like kind of for a stone that's a couple hundred years old, you're like, yeah.
Yeah, it's in the threes, I think, at this point.
Yeah.
It's like a really small number of people. To be totally honest, like I've done a lot of historic stones, and I've done a lot of historic stones, but I haven't done a ton of historic stones. Like I've done the 3 in Scotland. I did 13 in Ireland, and 8 or 9 in Iceland. Like there's so many stones out there. Like,
So many.
Like the only person who's done them all is fucking John, Travel of Stones Repeat.
Yeah.
Like that man will go to any place and do like 45 stones in a day. Like it's crazy. Like
That's crazy.
it's so dumb. I really love going to a place and experiencing the place, and if I get to lift stones at the same time, that's awesome too. But I also want to balance it out with going to like places that are older than America, seeing trees that are bigger than anything else I've ever seen in my entire life. Like all sorts of stuff like that. That's
I didn't realize, and you put me onto this, like how many stones there are in Ireland. Because I mean, like as a novice stone enthusiast, my main concern is like Iceland and Scotland, because that's what you hear about a lot. There's a lot of cool shit in Ireland that you just don't hear about as much.
Well, a lot of that's because it's sort of like freshly rediscovered.
Mm-hmm.
David Keogh and Andy and a bunch of other people over there are digging through this really cool ethnographic history that Ireland has called the Dukas Archive. And they're searching for the word stones or strongman or strength. And they're finding all of these stones all around Ireland. And they're going out and actually doing archaeology and finding them and bringing them back to life. Apparently, I think it's like the late 1800s, Ireland had this school project where they were like, everybody go home, talk to your parents, your grandparents, and write reports on all of the cool people, all of the cool places, all of the cool things that they talk about. And then they took that entire archive and put that into an archive, and they've recently digitized the whole thing. So everybody's finding all of these cool Irish histories that were lost for a very long time. It's super
Nice.
cool.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And their stones are monstrous. They're outrageously heavy.
To,
On the trip that we just took, I actually became the first person to lift one of the Irish stones, which was really cool.
yeah.
They had this set of 3 stones called the Port Mill stones, and the only one that had been lifted was the first piece, which was about 300 pounds.
Okay.
I managed to lift the second piece, which was heavier than that. And then because I lifted it, Connor Kenny, who's a former pro rugby player and has become one of the big people over in Ireland, went and got himself all psyched up and lifted the third piece. He was like, it's gonna be one of us.
Yeah.
And he did it like the day after I was there and posted about it. So it was pretty cool. It was awesome to see that, like, he would come out and just like get it. He was like, oh, the second one's done, the third one must be doable, and then would go out and do it.
Yeah. You
That trip
lifted
was
a
awesome.
you lifted a stone in Ireland, like outside of a coffee shop. Is that like just on a concrete slab out there?
Yeah, that's not outside of a coffee shop. That's actually outside of a person's house.
Okay.
There's 2 outside of people's houses. The first one was outside of an old pub. It was the Tuam Corner pub, and I had somebody stop and be like, "What are you doing?" And he's like, "I remember that stone. I have photos of myself as a kid on it." And he like brought his daughter out to like watch us.
Yeah.
And I ended up having an article in an Irish paper because he like saw me lift the stone, and he was like, "Oh, I got to tell the local paper about this." And they contacted me and wrote like a whole article about it. It was really cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but then the other one is the Clare Galway stone, and that's outside of a former pub and now somebody's house. And that's the one that's like right on the street corner with like people driving around and stuff. That one's really cool. That one was the most challenging stone I lifted in Ireland. Even more challenging than the flag.
So when did that stone get put on the street?
It's been there for pretty much ever, as far as like local tradition goes.
Yeah.
It was a thing that people used to lift after the pub and after church and stuff like that on Sundays. That seems to be a lot of their tradition, was like lifting after mass or lifting in that type of situation.
Yeah. That's interesting. I could just imagine, like, we can't have that in the States because that stone would start just moving itself down the street somehow, and then next thing you know, you got to go like wandering around the neighborhood to find it.
Well, so yeah, so a little bit of a thing happened while I was lifting that stone. A local in Clare Galway actually stopped and watched me struggle with it for a long time, and then and then posted about it to his local Facebook group.
Mm-hmm.
And a whole bunch of the locals were like, "Oh, that was the stone that you used to have to pick up and carry across the street after mass, and like then go have a pint and then carry it back and blah 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 blah." And the people who own the house are like 85, 90 years old.
Mm-hmm.
So after I lifted it and after he posted about it, a bunch of people from the town hauled it across the street and caused like a real big issue. Like they made it all the way across the street, and David actually called me and was like, "Did you do this? Because this is super disrespectful." And I was like, I would never do something
No.
like that at all. and I like went back and like I tried to apologize to the owner, and I was like, I'm sorry if this has caused any consternation. And she was just like, I'm on the phone, I don't want to talk, and like slammed the door in my face. And I was like,
Oh
oh,
man,
I hope that I didn't screw this up for everybody.
creating an international incident.
Yeah, but it was a case of like wrong place, wrong time. Not that I really did anything wrong,
Right.
but it hurt so much. Like it hurt so much after doing everything I could to be respectful and like really enjoy the culture and like talk to people and everything. Like I felt so bad about that.
Yeah.
So
It's
yeah, the Stones can walk.
yeah, it's interesting. Like people like the Moab stone, the one that I lifted in Utah. It has a little spot next to a tree, and sometimes it just wanders down the trail a little bit, and
Yep.
you got to go get it. My buddy Michael, when he went to Scotland, one of the stones, I can't remember, maybe it's the Fianna stone. Is that the one like in like a sheep pasture?
Yeah, you climb over a fence.
Yeah. He's like
Lifted on
that.
the
He's
plant.
like that one was like 100 yards into the field. It's like
Yeah.
how'd it get there? It was,
Yeah, people. Like
you leave
to
them
move
alone
shit
for a little
around.
bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
You leave them alone for a little bit. People are going to like handle them. The Husafell stone that does not happen to because it's too heavy to move.
Yeah, yeah. There, I'm really glad that hasn't walked. That could be bad.
Well, and like that's like one of those things that like if you know about it and you're strong enough to move it, like you're going to take care of it.
So, honestly, that's like a thing that's happening right now with stone lifting becoming so much more popular. Like people are starting to do things that aren't in the spirit of sometimes. Like
Right. Like tacky and things like that.
yeah, somebody lifted Husafell to shoulder and got into a whole big argument about it with people. Like it was, like there's all sorts of stuff like these. Like the thing that is really interesting and that I love about stone lifting is that these are historical artifacts. These are historical relics of strength that you are still allowed to go out into the world and touch. You are still allowed to use. They are hundreds, if not thousands, of years old. Like you need to use them in the context that they are historically used in, or at least as much historical accuracy as we can give them, because realistically we're going on oral tradition, and as we talked about earlier, that stuff changes. But like Husafell is not a shouldering stone, it is a pick up and walk with it stone, or pick up and place it on a plinth stone. Like those stones should be treated in that way. Fianna is not a pressing stone. Like it is wonderful that people are strong enough to press it, but there's other people who will follow their examples and not be strong enough, and that leads to the stones being damaged, to them cracking, to them being removed from use. That's already happened with like the Wallace putting stone. Jamie Gorian had to replace it with another stone because a big chunk of it got chipped off. Like these stones could go away in seconds, and we'll never be able to touch them again.
And I think about that a lot with like American stones, because we like they're not that old, and there are a lot of them, right?
Yeah.
Like in my mind, like I'm not saying like go ahead and use like the Utah stones or the New England stones, but I think it would be more of a tragedy if the Husafell cracks down the middle than the Moab stone.
I agree.
I'm not saying people to like try out don't like abuse the American stones, but like if they go away, at some point we're going to be left with a few, and those few are going to be like the kings, right? Like those, that's when the history really comes in.
Yeah, and the cool thing about stones is you can go out and get a stone. Like if you
Yeah.
if you want to work on pressing a stone, go get a stone and press it. Like a lot of the stones that we have that are set, we're setting them in specific traditions. Like there's Havlift style. There's ones that are pick and carries. There are ones that are ringed stones. There are ones that are like to shoulder. You know, like all of these are done in the tradition of other stones. So I highly recommend that people treat them as if they could be historic stones.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because all history starts somewhere. We're just a few years behind.
We'll catch up. Maybe not in our lifetime, but we'll see it.
I mean, yeah, something's gonna happen.
You mentioned the Emberstone as being like one of your favorites. Was that just like one of your favorites in Scotland, or just like overall?
Oh, it was my first historic stone. It was the one that really like captured my imagination. The idea of going to this little cottage in the middle of nowhere, asking for permission to lift the stone, lifting a stone, and then signing a book that strongmen going back to like the 60s or 70s had been like, that's fucking cool, man. Like, and that it had been used for years prior to the book and used in history forever. Like, it's the stone that Atlas stones are based on. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like that is the stone that they come from. So that's one of my favorite stones of all time. One of my favorite stones that is recently rediscovered is a very personal one to me. It's the McPhee stone, which I got a chance to lift last year when I was in Ireland. We had planned our trip to Ireland and found out about the McPhee stone because Jamie Gorian, David, and Neil Coulthart went and lifted it on Isla. And we were like, well, we're going to be in Northern Ireland, so we should probably go do the stone that has my name on it.
Yeah.
And become the first McPhee in 400 years to lift that stone.
Dude. I bet that
So,
felt crazy.
Dude,
Like,
it was insane.
Yeah.
We we rearranged the entire trip. We actually got support from some local McPhees to help us. That's Lori and Bill, who they bring Martin over for the games and stuff normally, and they were wonderful enough to support us and pay for our boat ride over to Isla. So they paid for our boat ride over, and we got off this little 12-person boat after a 2-hour boat ride. Got picked up by the dude who found the stone and documented it. And he drove us all over Isla while we waited for Josh McIntosh and his family to show up from Edinburgh, because they were just happened to be in Scotland too. So they were like coming over on a different boat. We got to the stone and it's just sitting in the middle of this field. It's this big chunk, square, sharp as hell thing. And as I'm like looking at the stone trying to read it, Josh comes ripping up the dirt road, and they're all like waving out the window. And man, it was so cool. It was so overwhelming to me. Like I would like look at the stone and then sort of like wander away, and everybody would be like talking and having a wonderful time. And then I'd walk up to the stone, and it would be like a pin would drop. Like you could hear a pin drop. And I would like work on the stone, and I tried it the first couple times, and I tore my hands. Like it was so sharp, it tore all my entire palm. It ripped like 4 of my fingers on like the first lift. So I'm just like pouring blood everywhere for the rest of the trip. I'm like, you can see in every video that I have like my fingers wrapped up, and like my palm is wrapped up because it just tore it so bad. But like I tried it like 9 or 10 times, and every time I kept lifting it higher and higher and higher. And I finally got it to lap, and then I stood, and I just couldn't get my hips under to get it fully to chest, but I like stood up with it. And that was like the highest lift that anybody had done up to that point. And it was also the first McPhee's lift in 400 years.
Dude,
so
that's incredible.
How fucking cool is that? And how like how like weird of a story that like I started lifting stones 8 years ago, and now I'm in Ireland and I'm lifting the McPhee stone that is just rediscovered. Like, you can't write a story like that. That's so cool.
Yeah. That's awesome. That is truly cool. I gotta make my way over there and to us, like Scotland, Ireland, and Iceland.
Every time I'm over there, I'm just like, I don't want to leave.
Yeah. Yeah, I keep trying to convince my wife that we need to spend summers in Scotland, and I just throw in lift stones all summer long. And
oh hell yeah, yeah!
And like,
it sounds totally.
Don't worry about the cost. Like I'll cover that. I'll make money throwing, I guess, and I could have like that'd be cool. It's a cool idea. I mean, like
I think it's totally reasonable.
Yeah,
do it.
Why not? What's on the docket for New England stone lifting in 2025? What's your year look like? What do you got going on?
It's pretty full. It's pretty full. Excuse me. It's really full. The first really big thing is the All of New England Stone Tour in March, which we just talked about. Mm-hmm. John from Travel of Stones Repeat is coming out here instead of going to like a foreign country and doing all of their stones. He's coming out and doing all of our stones, which is fantastic. A person that he's training, Charlie, who's from California, is flying out and joining us as well. We're bringing as many people as we can from New England to all of the stones. We invite people to come out if they're close by, and if timing works, you're more than welcome to lift with us. I'll be filming that and hopefully editing it down to create like a late 90s, early 2000s skate video, but with stones. That's my goal.
Let's go.
After that, we have a event with No Fame Games in April where we're doing like demos and helping out there. In June, that's No Fame Games. That's when David Keogh is coming over, as well as Sean Urquhart. So we're going to have some of the biggest names with us. Then there's some other plans further out in the summer. We're working on Fort 4 again. There's also Maine with the Highland Games World Championships that we're supposed to be helping out with as well as like other small trips that we do throughout the year. I'm really hoping to get somewhere that's not just here. Like I'd love to go back to Scotland for a little while, maybe do a bomber run during the gathering, where they have the Denny stones and you can actually take a whack at them if you're there. Yeah. And obviously finding and setting a whole bunch more stones, and trying to build the community over here. That's really the big goal, is to make something new and super inclusive and super respectful and unique to New England.
Awesome. So where can people find you and get information on all these great works?
The best one is on Instagram. Most of the stuff's posted there. It's New England Stone Lifting on Instagram. We also have a link to my website, which is any-sl.com. which links to my like personal design site, but has the stone lifting programs, and there's those are kind of the big ones on the internet right now. Feel free to hit me up. Well, I'll answer any questions, help anybody out, like put anybody onto stones that we can. The only thing we ask is that you are respectful and inclusive of people. Don't be a dick, and we'll get along pretty fine.
Great. Are you still selling shirts?
Yeah. I'm definitely selling shirts. I'm actually my real life is I'm a designer. I do a lot of work for a lot of people, and I just recently launched a print-on-demand website called apileofdirt.com. So if you're interested, just buy a shirt from A Pile of Dirt, and you won't be sorry. They're awesome. They're all on comfort colors. They're really well made shirts. They're the shirts that we had at the fort. So like super nice cotton, super good cut, and I really enjoy them.
I bought one. I thought I just had to check, see if I was wearing it or not.
Which one did you buy?
That one, but in black.
Oh, this one. Oh, sick, yeah.
Because it's a good logo, and I will rock the shit out of a black T-shirt. So.
Hell yeah, homie. Yeah.
Yeah,
I like the mustard. I like the mustard just because
the mustard is cool. It's cool.
Yeah.
It's not a color you see everyone wearing, so like you definitely stand out in the crowd.
Yeah.
But yeah, so A Pile of Dirt's yours, which I guess I kind of assumed it was because of the aesthetic you have going on. Yeah. You have like a style, and I'm jealous of it because I've got a little bit of a tangent here, but I have a bit of like an eye for design. I know what I like, and I see things. I just don't have like the skill to execute what I like, and it frustrates me so bad. But you got it, and like the whole thing you're doing on your Instagram, like it's very cohesive, like someone who does this professionally. So
that's good to hear, because as far as I know, I'm a professional.
Yeah.
I've been doing this. I've been doing design work since honestly the late 90s. I got a job right out of high school at my local newspaper, and I've never stopped. So that makes thank you. I appreciate the compliment, and
you do good work.
Thank you. Yeah, and honestly, might as well plug that. If anybody wants any design work or to talk about anything design related, I am always happy to have a conversation with people. I'm a Vasty Matey on Instagram, and my website is jrtmcp.com, which is me, Jarrett McPhee.
All right. Awesome, guys. Do the thing we always do. Comment, like, subscribe. Please comment, like, and subscribe. If you look us up on Instagram, share the stuff. Please. It helps. All right. That's it. Thanks for coming on. And as always, throw far. God bless.